A very good evening to everybody. Can everybody mute themselves, please? Thank you. A very good evening to this August gathering. I extend a warm welcome our district dignitaries, co-hosting club presidents from District 3141, President Dipan Shah from RCM Lower Parel, President Vicky Punjabi from RCM Midtown, President Sailesh Jalan from RCM Nariman Point, President Manan Podar from RC Rising Stars, President Naveen Chawla from RC Bombay Hills South, President from RCM Shivaji Park, President Mahima Menda from RC Mulund Hills View, President Rajit Barur from RC Dhaisar, President Jyoti Gandhi from RC Bombay Kandivali, President from Bombay Northwest Malad, President Dinesh Khemka from Mumbai Western Elite, President Chintrankan Gupta from RC Mumbai Iconic, President Rajesh Kasar from RC Virar, President Ninal Shah from RC Palghar, President from RC Mumbai Lakers, President from RC Bombay Seacoast, President Timtan Dalal from RC Mumbai South, co-hosting club president Anita Murgai from RC NM Industrial Area from District 3142, co-hosting clubs from District 30C0, 3060, President Vaishali from RC Baroda Shivaji Nagri, President Amrish Shah from RC Anand Roundtown, President Smita Junjunwala from Inner Wheel Club of Bombay Bayview, participating Rotaract Club presidents of Rotaract Club of Bombay Bayview, Bombay Powai, Bombay Midtown, and Rotaract Club of Athena. A warm welcome to everybody, all Rotaractors, Inner Wheelers, and also the Rotary members. Friends, we are in Rotary to make a difference to the world we live in and to ensure we add value to the business, personal and spiritual lives of Rotarians and our partners in service. When we curated today's startup show, we had one intention in mind: to get the right people and ask them the right questions and thus add value to the Rotarians who are innovating, expanding their horizons, and polishing their entrepreneurial abilities. What could be a better opportunity than this? To have knowledgeable people share their life experience with all of us. Here's the event's tagline: they did it and so can you. It's with this faith in every Rotarian's innate ability that I present today's startup show. I am immensely grateful to our baby-wise Rotarian Ami and Manish Choksi for visualizing this event and curating it. To all the clubs who have wholeheartedly supported the effort and our enthusiasm to co-host, and to DG Sunilji for agreeing to grace the event with his presence. And yes, to everyone who is here today, because we want to listen and learn and make a difference to the wonderful world we live in. Enjoy the next 2 hours with us. Over to you, Mona, to take the event forward.
Thank you, Smita. Hi, everybody. I'm Mona Babla, your anchor for today evening. Thank you, Bombay Bayview, for trusting me to anchor the first of its kind, this startup show. We promise you that by the end of this show, you'll be inspired to start your own entrepreneurial journey and be motivated to take your business to the next level. Remember, they did it, so can you. I request Ami Chokshi to introduce Mr. Manish Chokshi, our host for today evening.
Very good evening to everyone. I'm Rotarian Ami Choksi, Director Vocational Service at Rotary Club of Bombay Bayview. I introduce to you the curator of this event, my husband Manish Choksi, an avid angel investor himself and a tech expert. He has handled various aspects of a growing business from close quarters and brings immense value to the business investment table. Here's someone who knows the right questions to ask. Over to Manish Choksi.
Thank you, Ami, for the kind introduction, and thanks to Smita and all of the other Rotary clubs for providing this platform. Thank you to Sudhir, Piyush, Rashi, and Sneh for joining in and agreeing to speak about your journeys. I'm sure we will have some very, very valuable tips and lessons to take away from this evening. So let's begin. Over to Mona.
So let's welcome President of the Rotary Club of Mumbai Hanging Garden, Rotarian Deepak Javeri, to introduce our first speaker of the evening, the young and dynamic Piyush Bansal, co-founder of Lenskart. Over to you, Deepak.
Mona, Deepak hasn't come, so Vicky Punjabi would be introducing.
All right,
Okay.
Little
There's a change
correction.
in order.
So we have, sure. So we have Mr. Rotarian Vicky Punjabi doing the introduction for Deepak,
Piyush.
for Piyush Bansal, yes.
Sudhir. Yes, Mr. Sudhir Sethi will be speaking next, right?
No, I think we had a change in order. So, Piyush has some personal commitments, and so we have to change the order, Vicky. So we are going to have Piyush Bansal present first.
Okay, so Sudhir has a change of commitments.
Yeah, no Piyush had. So he just needs to leave a little early. Yeah.
Okay, I don't have the introduction of
Okay, so
Bansal.
Okay, Smita, you want to do that, please? If you have it open.
Mr. Piyush Bansal and his Lenskart is an amazing success story in the startup sphere. Lenskart, co-founded by Piyush, is the leading player in tech-led optical business with 15% MOM growth and reaches 100,000 customers a month through its 3,500 plus workforce. It is a pleasure to work with Piyush, and we will hear the experiences in today's show. Over to you, Mona, to Piyush.
Thank you. Thanks for inviting me, Manish, and everybody from the Rotary Club. Thanks for giving me this opportunity, and happy to share my experiences, Manish sir.
Okay, so Piyush, I think on that note, I think maybe what we would first love to know is where did this inspiration to start Lenskart or a technology-led optical services and accessories business, come from?
So yeah, this is I think about 10 years back, and I used to work in US in Microsoft in 2008, and then 2008 I had returned to India and launched a garage startup from my house only. And there, the idea was to solve problems using technology and pick very, very specific problems that nobody focuses on. So Lenskart wasn't the first thing that I started with. I started with trying to solve student housing problem, because I personally had that problem when I went to college, and student housing was very, very difficult, and I had to really uh, take help and figure out. It was a very tough time. So I launched along with I hired some people in my basement, and we started working on creating a platform for students to find housing in their campus. uh, and that I ran that for about 2-3 years. And while I was doing that, I had built a team of very, very young aspirational guys with me. And there we were constantly also thinking about what else can we do in terms of creating value. In the classified students business, we had captured a lot of market, and students were finding it very helpful, but we wanted to do more. So there was a lot written about those days about how India is the blind capital of the world. 40% of world's visually impaired live in India. And honestly, the real story is that we had an intern who had just joined from IIT that day, and I was going to Noida in the car from GK2, and the moment I landed up in office, I had to give him something to do. So, and I was reading in newspaper an article about 40% of visually impaired in India. Uh, 600 million people in India need specs, only 170 million people wear specs. And I thought maybe this is an interesting problem which technology should take an attempt to solve. So I went to office and I told him, this is a problem, figure out what needs to be done. That is how honestly it all started. And then one
Great.
thing to the other, we realized that this problem is actually so big that it has kept us busy for the last decade, and I'm pretty sure can keep us busy for another 5 decades.
So serendipity, I guess, got you here out there. But talk a little bit about, what it was. Once the idea got germinated, you began. When you needed serious money for growth and capital, what was it like on knocking on the doors of, the VC funds or angel investors? Talk a little bit about how difficult that is.
Sudhir is in the call here, so I don't want to be, arrogant about it. But, honestly, we had already been running business for over 2-3 years now. And I knew nothing about this area called venture capitalists or funding in the last 2-3 years. And even now, when we were building it, there was absolutely no clue about funding. And I didn't really come from that background to know how all of this works. While I was in the startup ecosystem, there was a big grounding and sort of very, very focused towards creating consumer value. However, when we were doing this eyewear thing, roughly about 1 year into running it, uh, I think some people started noticing what we are doing. And I think also we were at the right place at the right time. I would say we were not doing anything great. We were just focusing on customer, trying to solve what their problems are. And uh, there were a few people who approached us with all kinds of opportunities. Somebody said that this is an interesting opportunity. I have a business. We will put money and you merge. You become the third co-founder in that business. And somebody came and told us that they will give us, 1 crore right now and 4 crores over 4 years to grow this business. And it is a nice high margin business. And at the same time, Sudhir is on the call. I think IDG, it used to be called then. They emailed me and they came to our office next day. TCM was there and with Venkatesh, and they said what we are doing, and we told them what we are doing, and they said, okay, why don't you come to Bangalore? And we went to Bangalore and they told us, this is the money that we want to give you. And we think this business can be $40 million over 5 years. So that's how the initial journey started. Now I have become a little bit more pro towards fundraising. But that days, that's how it started. And actually, I didn't really negotiate any term sheet with Sudhir or TCM at that time, because honestly, they were asking us how much money we need. We couldn't calculate the number. We probably came up with 4-5 crores at the max, but they said we need to put minimum 20 crores, otherwise business is not successful in their math. So I came home. My father is a chartered accountant, and I told him, he said, read the agreement carefully. There must be something here which is not right, because why would anybody give you money? Because he was anyways quite frustrated with me for the last 3 years. That what am I doing? So he said, read the agreement carefully. I think something, and then he read. He made someone of his lawyer friends also read, and he said, there doesn't seem to be any wrong. There is nothing to be negotiated. Just take the money and let me know when it finally comes. So that's how it started. And I think there is a goodness in being innocent at that day, because somebody who's giving you money, I think, is taking a lot bigger risk. So we didn't really negotiate either on valuation or on any of this. Yeah.
So I think, what I'm taking out of this, Piyush, is, single-minded focus on customer, single-minded focus on solving problems. And obviously, there is somebody in the venture capital ecosystem who will actually go curate, find people like this and teams like this. And then obviously, the art of raising money then begins. It's not really the science. And I'll leave that conversation with Sudhir once we have that with him. But it's great to listen to that, in the haystack in India, he was able to find one gem. I mean,
when a lot of our other offers were more attractive for us. And they were paying me very, very good salary in those days, where I had been on no salary for last 3 years. And their offer clearly mentioned, in those days, the salary I would make. And after working in Microsoft in US, there was a little bit of that pressure even from home. But one thing which I went with that time was my gut. After I met everybody, I didn't really necessarily go with the most monetarily high offer for me. I went with somebody who I liked in person, who I thought, is genuinely interested in, growing this. And that, me and my co-founder Amit, we went with that. And we didn't really get into too much detail about nitty-gritties. And I think that also helped, because sometimes when you try to get on only the numbers and all of that, it becomes, the time passes.
Cool. So what we'll do is we'll ask Sudhir the other side of the story on how he picks the teams he invests in. But having gotten the money and having begun the business and seen some traction, talk about, maybe the last few years where, going from an online business, you really transitioned into an online offline business, and and what stage have you reached today? Maybe.
So we were, when we started the business, and I truly, venture, our focus was simple, very clear that, we want to solve this problem of vision correction. And I think we were very particular about writing all of this in a document. And, I still have a book which is well printed. It calls the Lens Card Brand Book, and where we wrote what is our mission, vision, because I had read this book called High Performance Entrepreneur from Subrata Bachi. And he talks about DNA and mission, vision. So I was very much into that zone to write it all out. And I was reading it a few days back, and we had written that we want to be, and I'd come from Microsoft. So they used to say computer at every home. So we used to say specs on every face in India. So we were online, and I'm coming to that point which you asked. And we were doing well, and when we raised money, there was no plan to open stores. But when we were talking to our customers again, a lot of them said, we visited online, but we really wanted to go to a physical place to do an eye test or really try this in person. And we did all sorts of things to even send somebody at home to solve that problem. And we today have about 300-400 people who do a eye test at home and do trials. So the store journey really started like that for us, and later we found that as long as your product proposition is good, then it really doesn't matter. I don't think our mission at least was not to be an online company, and it really depends on what you write, and which is why it is important. Our mission was to put a specs on every face, and from that perspective, whatever worked, right? And we saw that our product was good. People were valuing it. We were making sure they are surprised and super delighted. So when we opened stores, people were queuing outside it. So we started with one between my house and the factory, then next to where my in-laws live, because I just got married. So this was the only two places. And then one up today we have now almost 650 stores, which we have built over the last 3.5 years. And yeah, the journey is still on. We're planning to add roughly similar amount of stores now in the next 6 months that we have added in the last 3 years.
So I don't know if you can share numbers, but from a viewpoint, I've been told that you've become India's largest, eyewear and eye accessory business in that sense of the word. But just talk a little bit about the size of the business and the spread in your own terms.
Manish, so we're luckily in a category जो कहते हैं ना अंधों में काना राजा. We are actually, we are in a vision category, so the andha also makes, more relevance. But in this category, there is actually, and I'm not giving business ideas to people, but there was nobody. So we became the largest, and there are other players who were largest, but we became the largest last year. But we are still very small compared to where this category. So this is not like apparel, shoes, where evolution has happened. So our business size is roughly about now $200 million, about 1,200 to 1,400 crore business. But when I look at just the size of the market, it is ironical that a 1,200 crore business or a 1,400 crore business is number one.
Okay. So what I get from you is that obviously the journey over the last decade has been, tremendous in terms of the effort put and the growth received. But there is obviously a large distance not only to cover in India, but now I'm going to change the topics, and you've kind of raised the bar on going international and global in some sense of the word. So where did that inspiration come from? And for very, very set businesses, it's very difficult to go global. For obviously a young business, there must be drivers and things that you see in the international market that make you go global. Talk about it a little bit.
See, our first priority is honestly to be like Asian Paints of India, Lenskart to be the Asian Paints of specs. That is very, very clear, and that is sacrosanct for us. But one thing that we have started realizing over the last 2-3 years, as the business scaled, particularly not just in revenue but in volume, is that there is something unique that we are doing, and not by design, but it ended up happening, is that we are using a lot of technology and a lot of disruption in this category. So, last year we shipped about 7 million pairs of specs, and it just came to our knowledge that even the most evolved businesses, eyewear businesses in India, which have globally, are shipping only 1 million or 1.5 million pair. So while they must be selling it at $400, from a volume perspective, we know what is the complexity, and of course India has its own complexity of price, logistics, operation, and then there is a volume complexity. And what we realized is that what we are doing with technology is essentially what Amazon has done to Walmart in that sense, and that was sort of a picture that we formed, that technology is the future, and with technology one can do what used to happen in 50 years in 5 years. And it is inevitable that every business, whether it is retail or even real estate, technology is going to come and disrupt. And we realize that this is bound to happen to eyewear, not just in India but globally. And we felt that because we are making so much investment in technology and supply chain here, both in factories, etc., it is important to make an attempt to be and see that vision, and obviously it is all about dreaming. We dreamt something about India, and we thought it is worth making an effort to can we be an Amazon of eyewear globally. So we started on that journey, and we started very slow. We went to one market, Singapore, just as a pilot. We wanted to see our people accepting our brand. And even from that acceptance, I deliberately chose a market where there are no Indians. In Singapore, I chose a suburb because I wanted to see whether we can sell to Asians their product quality. And our, luckily we had a positive response, and that gave us more confidence. So we are looking at a few more markets now. But I think India is unique in that sense. Today there is an environment where capital is available, and we have very tough environments here: high rental, high people cost, but low paying power. So with that environment and high volume, I personally think that Indian businesses, if they go outside, will be successful if built with a lot.
So when you began your journey, there was a lot of sourcing and supply chain that you did from China. Obviously, somewhere down the line, you've realized that there is a lot more strengths in India. Talk a little bit about how many of the glasses you make are made in India now. What's your plan in terms of manufacturing and supply chain?
So we almost 100% of our glasses that we are shipping to our customers, are made in India. So for there is our glasses is a multiple step process. There is frames, lens cutting, lens manufacturing. So lenses, we are doing it ourselves. We integrated that supply chain. In fact, most of what people buy in expensive shops is not Indian. And I was sitting with one of the ministers in one of the conferences, and I brought him the made in India point because he didn't want to drink Evian water and wanted distillery. So I used that opportunity. But what there are still parts, for example, frames. Today 95% of frames still come from China. And we embarked on that journey of starting that manufacturing in India. So we are able to do about 30% now. There is no infrastructure, no ecosystem, no ancillary support. But we have just invested in a facility, and in the next 12 months we will be making almost 11 to 12 lakh frames in India per month, which is significant, I would say, compared to what it would be the largest anybody is making in India. It will be the only organized setup in India. This industry doesn't exist here.
Okay, so I think there's been an evolution. You began with sourcing, but everything in terms of the quality of the glasses that you were making was controlled by you. Yes. And was being delivered by you. And now you are shifting to significantly increasing the entire value chain that you are controlling from that perspective.
But I must tell you that my learning is that there is this view that China is cheaper. That maybe is a thing of the past, because my personal experience, and we are doing both right now, is that India is significantly cheaper because labor costs there have gone up significantly. The automation engineering that you can do in India and technology, it is much. So the amount of automation today one can do is not insignificant, and that at scale can significantly reduce. So that I think there is no such notion, at least in my head, that India is more expensive. Actually, far cheaper. And for customized high value processes, India is far better.
So Piyush, a personal question: when do we is Lenskart already a unicorn? And what are your plans in the next 5 years to become a listed entity somewhere in the world?
Unicorns, I think, is becoming very, very common now in India. So I don't know whether that is still something to be aspirational or proud of. I think it is. I won't say we have arrived, Manish. To be honest, there is, like I said, this is still the reason we are so-called unicorns is because people see that there is opportunity to create 10 times bigger companies today. So only if that happens, I would say we would get there, because this is still in the betting stage. Yes, we want to list in India. I think we have been very clear. We will list in India in the next 3 to 4 years, and the goal is to create a very sustainable, long-term enterprise which can solve this problem, not for just next 2-3 years, but for decades to come. And my personal aspiration is to build a high quality enterprise. That's my personal aspiration. So we will list in India.
Great. So thank you for sharing your journey, for sharing the success that Lenskart has got. And I'm sure, if you have more questions towards the end, I know you have some pre-commitments. I'll reach out to you and get them.
If you want, I have some time if you want.
Yeah. So no, I think we'll do it towards the end. That's okay. No problem. Thanks a lot, Piyush, for sharing your story. Thank you for coming, despite some commitments.
Thank you.
So thank you, Piyush. That was very inspiring. I would now like to request Smita to introduce our chief guest for the evening, District Governor Rotarian Sunil Mehra. Over to you, Smita.
DG Sunil Mehra hails from an illustrious textile family, obtained a textile diploma from Sasmira, Worli, and completed further education as a polymer technologist from Bhagubai Mafatlal, Villaparle. He has been a keen sportsman, having played cricket and badminton at school, college, and national level. He has started his business career by setting up a separate art silk unit for fabric weaving. After running it successfully, he diversified into marketing and distributorship. Today, he is the MD of Corbiz Private Limited and Brand Ideation Private Limited, which deals in manufacturing and marketing of various packaging products in wood, paper, plastic, and acrylic. So, introducing none other than our DG Sunil Mehra.
Thanks. Thank you so much, Smita, for having me here.
Our pleasure, Sunil.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Bunny.
So, hi, Sunil.
Hi, how are you doing?
Hi, thank you for coming and joining us in this startup show.
Just be a little easy on me. I'm not a Piyush Bansal.
No problem. No, I think you've seen you've seen both sides. You are a successful businessman. I've grown your enterprise, but you've also been a sort of a Rotarian for a very, very long time, and I've seen the side of sort of giving back to society, and where Rotarians have played a great part. And some of the things, and we'll talk about it when we talk to Sudhir also. One of the things that people are talking of today is the fact of a triple bottom line, which is where companies' performances are not only measured by their financial performance, but what is their impact on society? How are they sort of doing on environment and governance? And at the same time, there are some people talking about measuring all of these things. Coming from both the world, just wanted to ask you, what is the view you share, and how do you think enterprises should incorporate this into their day-to-day work styles?
So, well, Manish, environmental and social and governance issues, I think, should be a priority for any department. The advantage of proactively tackling ESG issues are significant. Having a robust ESG program can actually build a strong corporate brand and promote probably a sustainable long-term growth, benefiting a company and, of course, the investors. In today's rapidly changing business climate, attention to these issues is becoming critical, I think, to long-term competition and success. If you wish to increase your pool of investors, you have to take a track and probably retain the best talent. Today's millennials, for example, typically care deeply that the companies that they work for embrace these values. So yes, most certainly, ESG values will determine the bottom line in many a company now.
So what I'm taking away from this is, not only is it good for society, but if you want to attract and retain the best talent, especially the millennials, what your company stands for and how they impact the environment, the society at large is becoming increasingly important. I mean, posing another question, what do you think is the role of, let's say, organizations like Rotary or, the non-government organizations in terms of trying to educate corporations to sort of embark on this agenda if they have not already begun in some sense of the word?
So in the domain of, I think, social responsibility, I think India has been probably a front runner to instill the fact that corporates need to be absolutely there. Environment and corporate governance is a change, I believe, is currently in its transition phase, where the millennials are driving it again. So I have been a Rotarian for a while now and have seen Rotary actually evolve. And an NGO like ours, which is structured, I think the culture of adopting corporate governance is already instilled, and the sensitization towards the environment is in place. So yes, we are there and pushing for definitely a broader carpet towards our maybe reporting systems, with need-based and sustainability becoming the core factor for any performance.
Okay, and if I mean, I'm sure Rotary is partnering with multiple corporates on, let's say, the CSR agenda in that sense of the word. But as ESG agendas sort of broaden out there, what do you see Rotary India or Rotary International's role in terms of working well, and where do you see synergies working with companies, and how can we weave this into a much bigger whole than where we stand today?
So, like I said earlier, there is a huge change in the Rotary then and the Rotary now. Let me honestly say it was easier to do things earlier, but today it's more meaningful, more impactful. So for example, the kind of model we have for global grants, there is so much of concern for the ESG factor before it is even sanctioned. Impact assessments and trainings for sustainability is an absolutely important factor to ensure correct spends. In turn, it is our inbuilt structure that is getting more and more corporates to align with us, not to forget the factor of financial prudence. So yes, we are there already.
Okay, so you think that Rotary is a great platform to partner with corporates on this entire agenda, not only on CSR, but a broader ESG agenda in that sense of the word out there. So great to know that. And you know, uh, some words of advice for young entrepreneurs. There is always this challenge, as you heard from even Piyush earlier, for fast-paced growth versus balancing sometimes the need of society, and uh, where does how does a young mind sort of make these choices, so to speak, in some sense of the
Oh, Manish, I think first it's important that any entrepreneur defines his or her vision, and you always will have a planned path to achieve it, realizing jolly well that you will need to deviate from the plan in the struggle. And then I kind of would put it into the 4S factor. Struggle being the first S is when you start your venture and are fighting tooth and nail to manage three ends. And I say three ends because two banks of the river don't meet and three ends of a triangle do. To imply there will be a traversing from point to point in the struggling phase. Then of course it is the stabilizing factor. When you realize things have more or less fallen into place, and followed by sustainability, where you achieve moderate success and realize that now there is a consistency in the business you are in. And lastly, the fourth S would be scalability. Having gone through these three stages, you are now ready to go to the multiplying factor, where you have placed all your foundations in their place, and using your base, growth is logical to the next level. So young entrepreneurs need to realize, don't get into a venture thinking it's an overnight success story. It's always going to be a story of struggle, stabilizing, sustainability, and scalability.
Great. Thank you for those kind words of wisdom from somebody who's seen quite a lot. And thanks for coming in and gracing the occasion.
Thank you for having me here. Thank you so much.
Over to Mona.
Thank you, Sunil. Taking the evening forward, I would like to welcome the President of Rotary Club of Mumbai Midtown, Rotarian Vicky Punjabi, to introduce our next speaker for the evening, the enterprising Mr. Sudhir Sethi, founder of Chiratae Ventures, one of leading venture capitalist firm in India. Over to you, Vicky.
Yes, Mr. Sudhir Sethi is the founder chairman of Chiratae Ventures, a leading venture capital firm advising AUMs of almost $175 million. They have advised and funded 100 plus firms across sectors like fintech, healthcare, deep tech, consumer digital sector, including some stars who are a part of the show today as well. Besides this, he's also an avid wildlife photographer. We look forward to hearing superstar Sudhir and how he unearths these gems and helps them get to their brilliance. Welcome, Sudhir.
So, good evening, Sudhir, and welcome. And just a small correction on Vicky's thing. Sudhir kind of almost manages an AUM of 750 million. Don't worry. So, thank you, and good to thanks out there, and we'll take this forward. Sudhir, welcome to the show. I think, there is no better person I can imagine than to ask this question. What is really the role of venture capital firms, and what is sort of what can you talk about, and how well is the Indian venture capital ecosystem development in some sense of the word?
Manish, Ami, thank you very much for inviting us, and to all our Rotary friends, and Vicky ji, thank you for introducing. So I think, if you look at your first question of the role of a VC, let's look at India. And India has obviously business, consumers, supply chains, and effectively there are inefficiencies all over, like any other country. So if you look at, let's say, healthcare as an example, the way we look at it is 1.25 billion people, and over 1 billion don't have access to good healthcare. How do you solve that problem? We can build enormous amount of clinics. It hasn't happened in the last 60, 70 years. It is unlikely to happen in the traditional manner as we move forward. How do you get insurance to those 1 billion people? How do you get just basic general practitioner consultancy? Our view is that this problem at scale cannot be solved by building a brick and mortar infrastructure. It has to use technology. And I think Piyush mentioned the whole issue of getting eyewear on every face. That's exactly what we are talking about. If you look at another example, farmers, I believe the average holding of a farmer in India is about 2.5 acres. And net, what the farmer earns is 45,000 in a good year per acre, which means a family of 6 will be possibly earning 1.5 lakh rupees at best in a year. How can that family flourish in a good life in terms of providing education to children? So one method is increase crop productivity. There are many methods, but I'm thinking one method is increase crop productivity. How do you do that for a 2.5 acre plot of land? So can technology provide? We have a company called Cropin, who is now through satellite imagery providing crop productivity solutions to whether pest control can be done, whether the crop is about to get damaged, for 7.5 million acres of land in India and outside the country. And this is through satellite imagery. So technology is providing solutions at scale. That's the first element, the role of a VC which plays. This is potentially has the impact to change the lives, while it's a business solution of 100 million farmers and their families, which means it can impact 300 to 400 million people in the country and income levels to them. The list goes on. We have Rashi here. She's solving challenges in the cancer space. We have Sneh here, who's solving the whole issue in education through technology. So effectively, the role of a VC, to my mind, is to identify challenges in the system which have not been solved before. And in our case, at least, and 70% of venture money, by the way, goes behind technology, is to solve them through technology and build them up to scale. And those solutions have not been found before. So in some sense, you can say VC money is discovery money of a new business model, of a new revenue model, of a new product, a new service, and all in an and situation to solve a challenge which has not been solved before. in some sense also using technology, deep technology, and it is also a proxy for R&D. If you look at today, we have 55 active companies today, and they have filed 120 patents and granted 28 patents. And they will be doing more and more. It is one of the parameters by which we fundamentally believe that technological disruption is going to solve challenges in a shorter period of time as such. So to me, this is fundamentally the role of a VC, and this is where we play in the market space. I think your second question was on the ecosystem.
Indian VC ecosystem, and I'm sure you've seen it in a very nascent phase about more than a decade ago when you began this journey. And today, obviously, there is a very different landscape which we see out there.
Yeah, I started investing in India in venture in '98 when there were just 3 or 4 of us around, and it was an interesting journey at that point of time. But today, if I look at the total VC and private equity is again proxy for risk capital, and the total capital invested in India in the last 5 or 6 years is approximately $150 billion only in venture capital and private equity. This is all equity. This is not debt. This is equity, and there's no collaterals here. Okay, because the biggest asset we have is intellectual property. The biggest asset we have is businesses. There's no physical asset. We don't buy land. We don't buy anything of that sort in those companies. So out of this, about, I would say, anywhere between 15 to 20% is venture capital. Venture capital is early stage, and that has been growing every year. Our belief is that in the next 5 to 6 years, this ecosystem will probably be at least 2 times in terms of opportunity. We are seeing the signs of it already. And especially post-COVID, I think we've seen phenomenal amount of activity in the last 6 months, which we never envisaged will be there earlier. So the ecosystem is very large. Just to give you an indication, we ourselves are seeing about 2,500 to 3,000 entrepreneurs every year to select and to sort of look at what we should invest in. And if I look at when we started Chiratae, at that time it was called IDG Ventures in 2006. In October, November, December 2006, in that one quarter, we saw 67 entrepreneurs. And today we are seeing 2.5, that's so 7, that will be about 300 a year. Today we are seeing 3,000 a year. That's the scale which has happened. Don't be surprised in the next, let's say 5 to 6 years, we ourselves will be seeing 10,000 entrepreneurs a year.
So as you see the size of the industry increase, the number of entrepreneurs that you're selecting from, and that pool has increased. What has happened on the investor side? There is an interesting journey there also, where maybe the first investor in your first fund was a foreigner, and today, obviously, as you raise fund 4, the mix of capital from abroad and from India, this is kind of changing and in flux.
Yes. So let me answer that question in 3 layers. First and foremost, domestic capital in any large contiguous market like India, China being an example and US being an example, ultimately plays a very pivotal role. If you look at venture capital in China, 60% of the investments which are made in China are by domestic capital from China. In China, it happens to be large part private also came in. In India, if I look at just the 150 billion, and out of that, let's say 20% is venture, which is 30 billion, and out of that, about 5% in the last 5-6 years would be domestic capital. It's a small number. However, we started, we thought that, look, if we have to build companies from India, there is nobody else who knows how to build a company from India than industrial entrepreneurs in India. Manish, you have been on a global advisory board and advised us on many, many issues. And the biggest value add which we and our entrepreneurs find is how to build a great company from India. That is a phenomenal experience which we can get from people we associate who have built companies from India. So we started in 2013 going into the market and educating Indian families, Indian ultra high net worth individuals, Indian institutions, Indian corporates to look at this asset class and see if they can invest in this asset class with various degrees of benefits. I think today, at least for us, 50% of our capital comes from India and 50% comes from outside. We have raised approximately 1,500 crores in the last 5 years from India. And our experience has been enormously beneficial because the time which Indian entrepreneurs and Indian families are able to spend on our portfolio companies is enormous in helping them grow. I think there is also a reverse benefit. Apart from financial benefit, this is a new asset class. This is illiquid, this is risky, but it gives better returns, etc., etc. I think there is a bigger play here. The bigger play is of technology. It is our belief, and that is what we discuss with our potential investors, that technology is going to play a very big role in your businesses also. And if you look at just the macro level industries in India, there is a big thick wall in innovation happening outside with younger entrepreneurs compared to innovation happening inside companies. Because inside companies, there's a legacy, and in some sense, you're supposed to protect your old system. The outside, if you're able to innovate outside and bring it inside, that's a great way to do this. So what we are going back to our Indian investors and saying, this is a great way to learn about what's happening in the Indian market space so that you can look at this technological and deploy it in your firms, because that's the biggest learning. And by the way, these things are not available in public markets. These kind of companies will grow over a period of time. And we also believe that Indian corporates will be also large acquirers of such technology business in the future. We already have a few investors from India who started investing, and they are corporates into such businesses or acquiring such businesses. So I think it's a very win-win situation for Indian capital to participate in this asset class increasingly. And for us, it has now become 50%.
So Sudhir, what I'm taking away is that if I'm an individual, there is a window to, let's say, the new innovation, the new growth that we see from investments kind of provide to investors. For Indian corporates, obviously they look at the same returns and all of that, but there's additional benefit in trying to learn what younger, more agile companies can do with technology, and maybe even give them a sort of a way to grow disproportionately once they can acquire them. And then obviously, as a larger ecosystem, you talked about the number of patents, the amount of innovation that these companies have done. Talk a little bit about the amount of value creation these companies have done from that perspective. The kind of shareholder wealth you have seen created, and the kind of impact, maybe even comparing it to like you do to other technology companies, the very large TCS and Infosys, which India sort of somehow records only those companies as technology companies.
Sure. No, I think it's a very good question. If you look at let me start with the US and then compare it to India, because I think that will give us a very good proxy as to what's happening in India, and is the cup half full or half empty. If you look at the top 15 technology companies of the US, and I think all of us know what they are, in the year 2015, the valuation of those top 15 companies compared to the US GDP was 15%. Just 15 companies were valued 15% of US GDP. The same 15 companies in 2019 were valued at 31% of US GDP. Okay, this is the impact which has been created. And this is one methodology. There are many other methodologies, but I'm giving you a very simple one. If you look at India, the technology companies on the public market in the year 2015 were 7.6% of US Indian GDP. And in India, the technology companies in the year 2019 are approximately the same 7.5%, 7.6% of Indian GDP. What does this mean? It means that the GDP is growing in value faster than the Indian technology companies on the Indian stock market. Okay. Whereas in the US, the technology companies in value buildup are growing faster than the US GDP. It's a very interesting methodology. Just to give you an example, the private market technology company, and by the way, the December number for technology companies in India was valued at $220 billion. Today, the private market has created technology companies which are collectively valued at $200 billion. The public market has created this value over 30 years. The private venture capital and private equity market has created this value over 10 years. So what does this teach us? This teaches us that the life cycle of value creation has reduced by 1/3. And the biggest way of enormous value creation is solving real problems by using technology. If this is the case, then let's look at perhaps another proxy, which is very interesting for us is, if we just look at us as an example, we have 55 active companies, they're valued at about 7 billion, which incidentally, we are not a very large fund. That forms 0.3% of India's GDP. Okay, so this is one proxy for measuring value of value creation in the market space, which is happening with technology companies, because technology companies and disruptive technology companies who are solving real problems are going at a rapid pace. They tend to grow anywhere between 30% per year to 100% per year. And that is because that opportunity exists in the market space.
So Sudhir, yes, we understand the pace at which these companies grew. But Piyush talked about, an interesting construct that I want to create a company that is good or great, and I want to create a company that is scaled, but more importantly for him, a company that is resilient in some sense of the word, a company that is almost everlasting. So there cannot be a greater sort of challenge that these companies would have faced than the current pandemic, that we saw in some sense of the word. And I think there are some interesting stories on difficulties startups have that have got published in newspapers. What's been your personal experience with your portfolio companies? How did they react? How resilient they were, and how will they come out of this entire pandemic in some sense of the word?
So, absolutely right. And maybe I can prefix this with a comment that venture capital and private equity has a limited time role. It's until the company becomes stable, generates profits, generates cash, pays out dividends. That's when it becomes independent. Then our role sort of goes away, and we go back to finding new companies and bring them up to that level. But it's not every company that goes to that level. In a fund, we invest typically 35, 40 companies, and 1 or 2 will go, or 3 will go to a level which is sustainable over a period of time. Our biggest, those will go public. The proxy of going public is they will remain there for the next 30, 40 years or 20 years. But if you look at, there are many companies who don't go through that level. There are many companies who fall by the wayside overall, because those value propositions in the market are not strong enough. So that also happens. As far as pandemic is concerned, just to give an example of what happened, the aggregate revenue of all our active companies in the month of March was 7,000 crores. Annualized revenue was 7,000 crores. Just all 55 added up together, multiplied by 12. In the month of April, that's about $1 billion. In the month of April, that revenue fell to $350 million because everything shut down. And that was a very, very tough time. And, kudos to every single entrepreneur which I know of, because that's when entrepreneurs sort of relooked at their business and they did a few things. And, first from our side, it was very important to go back to entrepreneurs and say, hey, we're all there together. And to that extent, we will support you. And we fundamentally work with the entrepreneurs, and the entrepreneurs were absolutely magical in controlling costs, because typically you need, all these companies are making losses and you need that cash runway. So cutting costs means increasing the cash runway, which is what, we work with the entrepreneurs to do. Second was to have a positive mindset, saying while we are doing this cost side, let's look at the thing that does there an opportunity to grow further? And is there an opportunity it was very important to get into a positive mindset. Interestingly, again, kudos, the quality of entrepreneurs, some of them are here, is enormously positive. The revenue of our aggregate companies from $350 million came back to $650 million in May. And today they are back to $1 billion. So at an aggregate level, the companies came back. But at the detail level, about half our companies are now growing faster than pre-COVID levels. And the reason for that is because they are differentiating them further in terms of technology, in terms of deployment of technology. Many people are hiring technologists again, using AI, using data, using robotics, using processes which have become digital in nature. So going digital, more online sales started happening. And many of our companies also further enhanced their proposition to go global, because I think if the value proposition in India is strong, you can go global. So fundamentally, these were the things which happened, which enabled the many of the companies who grew faster to grow faster. And that was amazing. There are many companies who could not go through this. And they sort of, I won't say fell by the side, but it's still some more time they will come back to the original level overall, because it's a very hard, but that's testing the value proposition. So I also saw that there were consumer changes taking place. There were business changes taking place. So we saw that the consumer shift has shifted from demand-based, you talk to a typical economist and he says demand, right? It shifted to need-based. So companies, for us to invest in also, the criteria change. Will future, let's say, stressful times be successful for companies if they are demand-based companies in the consumer space, or are they need-based companies? How can you get the wallet of the consumer? You can get it, or the business, you can get it only if they're solving a real problem. That's sort of the answer in summary.
Okay, so those that companies that survived, etc. I mean, they are obviously going to grow in terms of performance. But when you look at the role that venture capital is playing, we heard from Piyush, an entrepreneur was not really looking at money, but you found him. So talk a little bit about anecdotes included on how do you go about finding entrepreneurs. You talked about 3,000 people sort of approaching you, and they all, I'm sure, come with business plans and financial sheets. But what do you really look at as a top rated VC when you look to invest in startups and
Sure.
in these kind of companies?
Again, we've been in investing for a long time. So to that extent, I think we are fortunate that in many cases, about 40% of the cases, we have inbound interest in terms of entrepreneurs approaching us. But we still want to go and look for disruptive companies. Our criteria is fivefold. Strong leadership, strong entrepreneurs. Many of them now are serial entrepreneurs. They build one company, exit that company, and then start another company. Early days, Piyush was one of them. Are they solving a real problem? Are they solving it with technology? And is that problem not being solved before? Very important for us. And that's where you can build a new company. And if there is competition already there, to us it is commoditized. So we basically invest in companies which, broadly speaking, may not exist earlier. The third is, can we assist the entrepreneur to build them to a scale over a period of time? And our asset class is a longer asset class. It takes 7, 9, 10 years to build a company to scale. So we would like to stay with them as they perform for the longer period of time and support them financially and other value add. So can they be built into a dominant brand, a market share leader in the country? Third is, can we take them global? And fourth is, are they having a real impact? Today, if you look at e-commerce, the meaning of e-commerce to us is predictable, high quality delivery of products at the right price, building local brands, which is very crucial, which was not there earlier. So today, consumers who we reach in the country, we have impacted and given them through our commerce companies, approximately 35 million consumers benefit from that, from our current portfolio. Similarly for farmers, similarly for patients, similarly for, Axios, one of the company which is looking at a rapid coagulator to stop blood flow for accident patients, saved tons of lives. Education, there are 10,000 people who are benefiting from SNAI's product in terms of educating through robotics. And last but not the, so this is the impact side of it. So these are the criteria. The other side of this is it a new product? Is it a new service? Is it a revenue model which doesn't exist before? So those are the and situations. And last but not the least, is the core technology, is it differentiated? Because fundamentally, I mean, look at it this way. Piyush is, I don't know whether he's here, but I think he mentioned 7 million frames, 7 million specs a year. That's a huge volume, which means from a data perspective, Lenskart knows where the eye correction takes place. And if you aggregate it at a level, right, there are other things which can be done. First Cry today has access to 3 lakh mothers every month. They know where babies are born. They know at the end of the day what the mother needs, and they can predict, and other service providers can come to them. And the list goes on, farmers and so on and so forth. So I think technology is the core. So we look at some of these and invest in the company.
So obviously, the word unicorn is used and abused in some sense of the word. But what would you tell a potential investor who wants to invest, in the next unicorn? How should they approach this asset class called VC? Let's say if I'm a person who can invest in a, AIF or 1 crore rupees, whatever, all those are fine. But what should we as an investor keep in mind when we look at this asset class?
So I think there is nothing called a potential unicorn. Let me clarify that. There is nothing called a potential unicorn, because when we invest in the company, neither does the entrepreneur know, neither do we know. Okay. What do? We back an entrepreneur. We come at a stage where so for instance, we don't invest in companies broadly which are more than 5 years old. Why? Because our belief is if the companies don't succeed in a 5-year time frame at some level, then it is commoditized already. So what we do is, in a portfolio construct which we have in a fund, typically 35 to 40 companies will be there. And those companies we have selected. So when an investor comes into the fund, there are many things to be checked. Number one, venture investing is not magic and voodoo, right? There is a science behind venture investing. There is a portfolio construct. There is the fact that we have sectoral focus. There is a fact that we need to add value in terms of the boards we bear. There is a fact that we do, a certain percentage in seed companies, certain percentage in Series A's, and certain percentage in Series B's and C. There is a science behind venture investing. I think it's important for investors to ask for that and read those documents, ask the presentation by the company, by the venture fund, and say, tell me, what do you do? How do you do? Check the track record, talk to entrepreneurs, talk to co-investors before any such investment is made. I think broadly, those are the things. We are like any other entrepreneur. When you invest in a company, you would do 10 things. Do the same thing with us.
Great. So you answered my next question, which was, what do you look for in unicorns? So you're saying, well, I'm not looking for unicorns in that sense. You're just looking for companies that can do fast-paced growth. Obviously, Sudhir, how do you, unfortunately in your world, success is sort of measured by either the value that your companies create and the kind of customer propositions they do. But obviously for your customers who are your investors, value is created when capital comes back to them in some shape and form. So talk a little bit more about what happens in, every VC likes to invest, but the trick is in actually getting the money back, so to speak, in some sense over. So talk a little bit about how difficult it is to get money back.
So I think it is difficult. The divestment, so we are not a fund where returns come from dividends. Let's be clear that the returns come from capital gains, and that is also long-term capital gains. It is a high-risk game. It is companies need capital to grow, and which is where we invest. So effectively, how do we then give long-term capital gains? Through exits. We buy shares of a company in the beginning, and then we sell shares at the point of time. The selling of shares can be taken at 3 levels. One is companies go public. So every VC fund We'll have some company going public, but that doesn't form the biggest chunk of exits. It forms a smaller chunk. The second is, at some point, value peak happens in our view and the entrepreneur's view, that company could be sold. And bigger companies, different companies can buy, either industries can buy current industries, or for instance, we sold Myntra to Flipkart, okay, before Flipkart got sold to Walmart. So most of the buyers today in the venture world are broadly from outside the country, because Indian M&As have not happened. The third one is secondary sale. So it's like a baton race, a relay race. So we are early stage guys. After this, after us comes mid stage people, investors, then private equity guys, and growth people. So typically we grow the companies and then we say, let's now exit by selling part of our shares or full shares to people who are larger and they can take the company to a bigger level. I think the short answer to your question, and these are the three exit methodologies, is giving exits and returns is the first discipline which a VC has to learn. It has nothing to do with the market. If a VC gets excited by investing alone, then he doesn't know how to exit. The exit methodology has to come in work and talking to people who could buy this company, even at the time of entry at that point in time. One of our LPs, you know him, Bruno, okay, told me in 2010, whenever I come to your fund, you guys only talk about investing, you will die. He is a Swiss German, and for him it's like hot knife through a butter. That made me think, how do we return capital? And we decided a certain methodology, and the biggest underlying theme of the methodology was discipline. Because, for instance, in Flipkart, before Walmart bought it, we exited 3 times partially, because we saw Snapdeal falling on one side and we saw Flipkart rising, and when we saw Amazon coming in. So it was a very important thing to take capital out, and partially so that we could give returns to our investors. So I think the discipline of exit is very, very important, which we review every quarter in our portfolio.
So Sudhir, I mean, I think we've gone through a life cycle of questions from the Indian VC system to, returning money back to investors in some sense word. So thank you for an enriching conversation in this area out there. Thank you for the words of wisdom. And I'm sure all of us have taken something as budding entrepreneurs who want to approach you, and how tough it is to get money out of your pocket, as well as, what we can do to, get really money into your fund and get it out. Thank you very much for participating.
Manish, I want to add one more thing. Very important, that the average age group now of our entrepreneurs in technology is in the age group of 24 to possibly 30, 32. Okay. And the kind of, so for instance, we just invested in a company called KB Colors, which is extracting color out of putting bacteria under stress. So color is chemical in nature or vegetation. And we have a lot of textile people, I think, here, right? So we believe that that's a great way to, and there are only 3 companies in the world who do that, okay? And large part of color comes from China. It's chemical. So how do you change? And this couple has built this technology from India, okay? So it's very important that, and these are young entrepreneurs. I mean, there's a gentleman he's 24 years old. He's called Ether. He's put a bionic arm, and it's one of the best in the world. So you will find that these are very young entrepreneurs. So I would encourage, if any of the children of our Rotary members here want to start a company, please encourage them. That's the best thing you can do to create new companies in the country.
Thank you. On that note, over to you, Mona, for
Manish. Thank
taking this.
Thank you, Mr. Sudhir. That was very insightful. I would now like to request President of the Rotary Club of Nariman Point, Rotarian Shailesh Jalan, to introduce our next speaker, lovely Miss Rashi Jain.
Thank you, Mona. Glad to introduce Ms. Rashi Jain. So Ms. Rashi Jain is an IITian and a Wharton Business School graduate. We will hear her today the amazing story of how her life experience led to the creation of Onco.com, India's largest cancer advisory digital platform, with some of the best Indian and American oncologists and labs associated with it. Welcome to the show, Rashi.
So thank you, Rashi, for joining us today and bearing with us through all the changes we've done in the flow of the event. Thank you, Shailesh, for the introduction. Just taking on from where the introduction ended, Rashi, talk to us a little bit about the formative steps of how you got started on this entrepreneurial journey when you came back from as a young Wharton graduate, so to speak, in that sense of the word. Coming from the world of investment banking.
Thanks, Manish, for having me. Thanks, Shailesh, for the introduction. So, Manish, basically, serendipitously, right after undergrad, I spent my entire working career in healthcare industry. And, what I realized was that internet penetration hasn't happened in healthcare. It's a very traditional industry, not just in India, globally. The way we get care today, going to a hospital, meeting a doctor, it's not very different from how our grandparents used to get care. And we all know that the experience for a patient is massively broken when it comes to getting diagnosed with a disease like cancer. There is complete chaos. There's no support system to get started on the treatment. There are massive issues with outcomes. And I saw that consistently, that although there were massive hospitals, not just in India, elsewhere in the world, big pharma companies, there was something missing. And, this thesis started forming in my mind that technology can play a big role in addressing some of these traditional gaps that exist in the healthcare delivery space. So that was sort of the motivation to decide to take the plunge right after Wharton. I decided that I'm anyway broke. I'm a student. I have the student debt. So it'll be easy to extend that lifestyle as an entrepreneur, right after business school. It'll be very hard when you get into corporate life. So I kind of decided to come back to India and take the plunge right away. And, choosing cancer was also a personal decision. My father-in-law had cancer. We had seen the journey firsthand. And we knew the frustration that a patient and the family goes through. And so the vision of Onco was born then and there, that we wanted to basically democratize access to best care to cancer patients, no matter where they are. And we decided to do that by building a network, partnering with some of the best oncologists in India and US, building an entire online ecosystem so that anywhere, any patient from anywhere can tap into this, get personalized guidance, and then get started on the treatment journey. So that is how it started.
Okay. So talk a little bit about the yin and yang. So what do I mean by that? You come from the world of business. Your co-founder comes from the world of medicine. How has this team been really instrumental in sort of the journey of Onco? And maybe through this, we'll discover what it means to be co-founders and how do you look for co-founders, sort of, so to speak, if you want to begin a fresh new idea.
Absolutely. I think meeting my co-founder, Dr. Amit, was probably one of the best things that could have happened when I decided to found Onco. Because here we were trying to solve a very complex problem. And if you're trying to build a business in healthcare, credibility is everything. And I came from the world of business. I knew operations, but I needed a partner who understood the intricacies of how healthcare industry works. And Dr. Amit, he at the time I met him, he was a practicing oncologist. He'd been practicing as head of radiation oncology in a big hospital in Hyderabad for 15 years. And it so happened that Amit was also sort of very frustrated with what he saw in the journey of his own patients and how broken it was. And he decided to do his MBA from ISB. And a Wharton professor was actually teaching a class in ISB, and he talked to his class about my idea because he was an advisor. And he introduced Dr. Amit and me. And we decided that we should build this together. I knew that Dr. Amit will bring in his expertise as an oncologist in helping us build the right protocols to offer the right kind of care to patients, in attracting doctors who would, although we were a young startup, who would value to partner with us. And I wouldn't say I had the experience, but I had the courage to operationally manage what was to come in the next 2-3 years. So this is how it started. And because of the complementarity of the founding team, I would say today Onco is truly a health tech company. So we have the DNA of healthcare as well as the DNA of tech. We have around like 15% of our workforce is doctors, 35% of our workforce is engineers, and then operational and business folks. So it's truly a very unique culture, and that has allowed us to do justice to our patients as well.
Okay, so what is this unique culture really building? You know, one goes to your website and one sees a little bit here, a little bit there, but one really can't discern from the website what really Onco is all about. So talk a little bit about the few pillars of what Onco is built on and how are they helping the patients or your customers in some sense of the word.
Sure. So Manish, I'll first paint the picture of the gaps in a cancer patient's journey. So there are around 3 million cancer patients in India who are getting treated actively every year. And you know, there are 4 big problems that every cancer patient faces. As soon as you get diagnosed, the first problem is that of chaos, not knowing what to do next, what treatment, which doctor to go to, how do I even get started? Onco comes in at that stage, gives personalized guidance to cancer patients, helps them connect with the right doctors, and get them started on the treatment journey. The second big problem that a patient faces is getting care from just one oncologist. So I think we are all familiar with this notion of going to a hospital, meeting one oncologist and meeting one doctor, and then doctor writing the entire prescription and getting you started. But cancer is a disease, it's a very complex disease. It requires a multidisciplinary review. It needs a team of doctors to come together and work together to collaboratively advise the patient on the right treatment plan. That doesn't happen in India at all. And what Onco does is we provide access to a multidisciplinary panel of doctors who would review the patient's case, who would come up with the right treatment guidance, and make sure that there is a corrective action happening in terms of the treatment that the patient needs to get started on. The third big problem that patients face is getting care under one roof. Basically, there is zero price transparency. Your diagnostic tests, your procedures, everything happens there. What Onco is doing is unbundling that care. So we can basically optimize costs of treatment for patients by connecting them with specialized treatment centers for more complex parts of the treatment, but also connecting them with local treatment centers where they can avail simpler parts of their treatment at a more affordable price. And the fourth big problem that cancer patients face is not having any care management in their journey. Like no one handholds them. If you have a problem at 10 p.m. in the night, like some symptoms, you can't really call your doctor. Doctors are busy. And there are so many different kinds of consequences that are suboptimal that result because of lack of care management. And Onco provides 24/7 care management to cancer patients that allows them to have a support system no matter what time and when, what part of their journey they are in. So sort of you can say that we've been able to accomplish all of that by building a 4-sided network, a network of oncologists, a network of treatment centers pan-India, a network of diagnostics labs, and a community of patients. And we have centralized care coordination for cancer patients, and then we connect them with the right stakeholders and take care of their entire care journey.
So obviously Onco has done all of these things, but I think the most critical thing that any sort of business or any sort of person in the field of healthcare needs to do is to build trust. So how does one go about building trust in the business? Because I think that's super critical in obviously a very difficult journey that you're trying to help solve.
Yeah, so I think partly trust comes from the credibility of the network, Manish. So we were, when we started, we spoke with a lot of patients, our early customers. Everyone said, I want the best. And we realized that if we wanted to give the best care, we wanted to partner with some of the senior most doctors in the country who specialize, who've written publications for different kinds of cancers. And that's exactly what we did. So today we have a panel of 1,500 oncologists in our network. Some of them specialize in very rare kinds of cancers. And we have been able to offer cutting edge treatment guidance through these doctors to patients, which has helped build trust. And then the second thing is that in an industry like healthcare, word of mouth matters quite a lot. And what we have seen is that our initial early adopters sort of became bandwagons of our own brand to other patients who then came to us. And now we are seeing this virtuous cycle get started, where a lot of patients come already knowing about Onco and hearing from other people who have used our services. That has helped us.
So any business like this, how does one do two things? At one level, how do you monetize from your customers? And another thing, how do you add value using technology, so to speak, to figure out what new problems you can solve in some sense of it. So talk a little bit about this two-sided problem. On one side, I need to make money as a business because obviously you need to pay for all of this infrastructure that you're running. But on another side, customers are looking for more than what they get in a regular doctor. So what role is technology playing to get you there?
Technology is integral in creating value for our customers, because if you think about it, if you look at the doctor-patient ratio, for example, in India, it's pretty bad. For every one doctor, we have 1,500 patients. If you compare that to US, for every one doctor, we have 100 patients, right? So access is a big problem. Doctors have limited time. And obviously, the care is so broken that depending on which part of the country you live in, you may or may not get access to specialists. Now, through technology, we have been able to create a network. We have been able to create efficient processes that allow our doctors to spend less time in providing comprehensive opinions. We have created templates, we have created all kinds of workflows for different kinds of cancers that guide the patient in a semi-automated way, even when they get started on their treatment journey, on what kind of treatments they should get, what kind of tests they should get, what kind of doctors they should connect with. We've also published this at reputed conferences like ASCO, which is like one of the largest oncology conferences in the world, where we have actually scientifically proven that all this guidance that we are providing to patients has 90% plus concordance with what actual doctors say. So if technology, I would say, is the backbone of all our operations. The entire coordination with doctors, hospitals, and patients is a very complex problem in healthcare. And the products that we have built have allowed us to scale. We are just getting started, Manish. It's still a very, very long journey. I think it'll take us another 4 or 5 years before we can actually say that we've completely made every part of this care process efficient. But yes, so the technology, I think, fundamentally is the core of everything that we have been able to achieve in the last 2 years.
Okay. So shifting focus from technology and growing Onco to, you as an entrepreneur, what sort of role has your family, husband, etc., played in this whole entrepreneurial journey? Where do you think, what works, what has been frustrations? Talk a little bit about that part of it.
Yeah, sure. So my husband's also an entrepreneur, and even before I started Onco, I think I had seen his journey from the passenger seat, so as to see how crazy and rewarding this is. So when I took the plunge, I think it was a very comfortable environment family-wise, because I had a partner who was sort of an advisor and completely understood the craziness of the lifestyle that came with it. So in that sense, I would say that for any founder, having a support system in family is very important, because it can get extremely tough. In the initial years, there's a lot of frustration. The entire process of scaling, hiring, firing people, fundraising, it can take a lot of toll on your mental health. And the only solace you can find is if you can actually confide in your family and get that support there. So for me, at least personally, it's been very, very, I've been very lucky. Sorry, what was the second question?
No, so that's good. That's good. Good to know. It's also important for young budding entrepreneurs to know that having that ecosystem around you is important, and how valuable role it plays through tough journeys. I think you've seen, what really has pandemic done? Has it accelerated this move? Obviously, telemedicine has become legal, and that is obviously a big boost to a platform like Onco. But what has it done in terms of the mindset of your customers or patients, if you want to call them that? And where do you see Onco maybe 2 or 5 years from today?
Yeah, so the pandemic brought about two sticky changes in the consumer behavior. The first change was that customers became very comfortable with the concept of teleconsultation for even diseases like cancer. So historically, we had seen that if someone got diagnosed with a disease like this, they wouldn't mind traveling even to a different city to get advice from an oncologist. But because of pandemic, people started relying on teleconsultation more, and we saw a clear tailwind there, where a lot more people were comfortable. But more important sticky behavioral change that we saw was in the physician community. Uh, Senior doctors would never ever do teleconsults before. And here we had doctors who had 35, 40 years of experience coming back to us and saying, hey, I'm comfortable doing a teleconsult for my patient. Doctors also realized the importance of this mode of communication with their patients, which was previously more like an optional thing or more of an add-on, which became so integral in the journey of a doctor and a patient when the treatment gets started or before the treatment gets started. So that was really positive. On the negative side, I think it was also a very tumultuous time for cancer patients because they are more prone to infection. And we saw a lot of patients delaying their treatment or not getting started on time. Because of which, clearly, I think we will see this in the months to come. We will see diagnosis at later stages increase. I think there was a study done by Wall Street Journal for cancer patients in the US that got published earlier today, where they found that there is a 50% increase in late stage diagnosis in cancer because of COVID, which is not going to be very different for India. And hospitals lost almost 70% of their revenue because the whole process of getting care became very hyper-local. So if I want to travel, if I have a disease today, I won't travel to Mumbai if I don't live in Mumbai. Luckily for us, because we had always focused on building a more differentiated supply, we were able to connect our patients hyper-locally with smaller centers near their houses to make sure that their care doesn't get disrupted. So we were able to serve our patients and grow during the pandemic. But yeah, I wouldn't say that on the offline side, the business has seen, the industry has seen tailwinds.
Okay, so great to know this, and all the best in your journey to becoming India's largest, provider of services for people who are infected with this terrible disease. All the best in your journey, Rashi.
Thanks for having me.
And over to Mona.
I'm sorry. I wasn't on mute. Sorry. Thank you, Rashi, for sharing your journey with us. I would like to call upon the president of the Rotary Club of Mumbai Hanging Garden, Rotarian Deepak, to introduce the next speaker, Mr. Sneha Vaswani.
Thank you, Mona. Thank you very much. I'm giving now the introduction of Mr. Sudhir Vaswani. Sudhir Vaswani is the founder of Emotix and is the brain behind Miko, a companion robot. He has participated at global robotics conferences and has led multidisciplinary teams to an astounding success. Also, he is into martial arts. Sudhir and Miko is one innovative story you can never get enough of. Let's hear it from him today at this show. Thank you. Over to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
So welcome, Sneh, and I know it's been a long wait, but
Thank you so much.
I'm sure your talk is going to be very inspirational because India is not known for deep technology, and to have a companion robo company born in India it would be certainly unique. So just talk about how you got started along with your co-founders from the early engineering days, and tell us a little bit about the baby steps you took to create Emotix and Miko.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, everyone, for having me here and for the opportunity today. So we are three co-founders. All of us are alumni from IIT Bombay, where we did our bachelor's and master's both. We've been into robotics now for almost 10 plus years, and all through the campus years, we were probably the one of the most active roboticists on campus. I worked for Siemens for a year into very heavy engineering project, which was related to building a huge optomechatronic system in DNA sequencing, and that's been our journey. Like we were into defense robotics, oil and gas, and at the same time into healthcare, heavy engineering robotics. And when we wanted to start a company, we wanted to start it out of India. And what we understood was oil and gas and defense. And then we realized that, hey, if you need to really build a business in this, technology will probably in these sectors will not give you uh, get you to number one position and that scale. You can get there after maybe 20 years of building a balance sheet and filing a tender of ONGC or of the Indian Army, and then you could get there. And consumer business was a place where trends change very fast, and we wanted to quickly, just like Apple innovates and comes out with new products every year with latest technology, we wanted to be innovating with technology at that pace. What took our attention is parenting and childhood. I'm sure we have a lot of parents and grandparents today on this call. And something that caught our attention was childhood has seen a massive change in the past 1 decade, which we call the eyeball shift. Kids have moved from conventional mediums of play into screens. I also am a recent father of a 1.5-year-old, and I know what role do screens play to even engage the child even for 5 to 10 minutes. And access to content available at the fingertips is very easy. 5 to 6-year-old kids today can Google something, maybe even use their parents' credit card to shop something, and they are very, very well conversant with almost all mediums of technology, and you all will agree with that. But we came across a startling revelation that actually learning levels of kids are on a downward trend. So it was 2015 when we started. You won't believe in 5 years, India has seen a drop by 50% of grade 3 kids who could do basic subtraction. And this survey covered millions of kids. That means kids can today Google something and get information, but the ability to comprehend an information and solve a problem was on a downward trend, unfortunately. Lots of reasons. And there we felt, why can't we use technology to reverse this curve and get learning levels better and better? We thought we'll create a solution for parents, and which parents can buy at their homes, and that can change the learning levels overnight and get the child on the right track. But we realized that parents send their kids to schools and they really don't care whether the learning level of the child is improving or not. They see the marks are coming, that means the child is doing good. And we all know that our educational system, that's not the actual way to assess a child. But unfortunately, that's how most parents consider. What parents were worried was 92% parents globally dislike the addiction that kids have with screens. And when we question them, what if we cut off your child from technology completely at a young age? 80% of them said no. Every other child in the classroom has access to it. I don't want my child to feel left out. So there we realize that parents are not comfortable with giving smartphones and tablets at a young age, fair point. But they also don't want to completely disconnect the child from a society and make a child a completely different child altogether. They want him to be a part of the mainstream. घर में सब क्लासरूम में सभी बच्चों के पास एक टैबलेट है तो मेरे बच्चे के पास भी पढ़ने के लिए होना चाहिए. That mindset was very prevalent. So we felt if we can create a new interface of technology that can uh, be a more positive and trusted interface of technology that can actually teach and be with the child rather than child sitting at one place for 4 to 6 hours and glued onto a screen. The child can roam around, play with it, interact with it. It should be something that the child loves and something that the parent can trust. So with that concept, we arrived at a small, cute companion robot that we created over 2 years and 2.5 years that we call Miko. And Miko took the shape of a cute, lovable device that children fall in love with. Parents know that this is for the best of my child because it is powered by AI, it is powered by tons of deep technology, which basically understands the child and delivers content, has a conversation with the child, and takes it up from there. So suppose if a child is coming back from school, the robot looks at the child and says, "Hey, what did you learn today?" The child says, I learned Pythagoras theorem, I played football. So, okay, so can you tell me, can you solve this problem for me? Or do you know what is the velocity of a football kick? The robot has a to and fro conversation with the child on that topic and engages the child further. We started building the concept from there. And yeah, so some of you who are Googling and checking on the YouTube link right now, that's our product right now. I'll also share it on a YouTube link for the ones who can check it later on, maybe after the call, so that you all can get a better understanding. So it's a robot that engages, educates, and entertains kids. The more a child speaks to it, it understands their areas of interest and initiates new conversations with them. What has happened is truly radical. We've been selling Miko since 2017. We launched it a day before the pandemic, before demonetization. This was when Modi ji announced demonetization. A day before that, we launched the product, a completely new category, a completely new product which was introduced in the market. And next day, Modi ji says demonetization comes in. So we've seen multiple highs and lows in our journey throughout, and that's the evolution of the product. It took almost 2.5 years to build it. So whatever phones you use, iPhones you use, the guys who are the original builders of hardware deep technology products, they are always 4 years before they start making it. So if you've seen iPhone 12 today, it takes almost 4 years to design it. Today maybe Apple would be working on the product that would launch in 2026. That's the kind of period that hardware takes. And India does not have companies who make hardware deep tech products as such. They generally white label Chinese products and sell it. So that journey we had, we first launched it in India. Now we've launched it in US and gone global with our brand. We have now almost 80% of our business coming from outside of India, and that's been quite a good learning so far.
I mean, Sneh, I know the product is a robo, and it does all cute things like dancing and doing these things on tables, and moving around it as a camera. So yes, there is a lot of hardware, but I think the secret sauce, so to speak, of this product is something called EQ or EI,
Absolutely.
Whichever way you look at it. Talk a little bit about emotional intelligence and its role in how Miko is, let's say, differentiated from Siri or any of the talking products that we see in our homes where we can ask simple questions.
Correct. So when we started working on this, what is it in the life of a child that plays the most important role after a teacher or after a friend or a parent? It's the teacher. An actual good teacher in all our lives has played a very important role. Now, 99% learners, their favorite subject and teacher is the same. If your favorite teacher starts teaching you something which you don't like, you start developing affinity towards that subject, you take more interest, and you start learning it. The emotional connect with the teacher plays a very important role. And that does not come with conventional screens just playing some video. And so we saw that a teacher is not only a subject matter expert or has a unique teaching style. The teacher is emotionally intelligent. If I'm saying something and you're paying attention, then I will go deeper into that topic. And if I see that you're getting distracted, I will take a step back and try to bring you back onto that topic and then go deeper. So this ability to understand that a human to human conversation that comes in where a person goes down and understands and has that emotional intelligence to understand what to speak, when to speak, that area of artificial intelligence is something that is our key of our technology, which is what we've been working on, where a machine being able to understand the emotional state of the individual and then trying to throw content likewise. And it is such a fresh area of AI that we started, that we see that it will continue to grow even for the next 50 years. And the scope is, there's no limit to the scope that evolves from it. And we wanted to use it to actually teach a child, where by 2025, if the robot can evolve into a full-fledged teacher, The student teacher ratio in our country is the biggest factor. Like there are 30 kids to one teacher. And with a new interface, it could be 1:1. And it could also assist a teacher in the classroom and be more emotionally intelligent and try to take a child on a journey which is customized for the child. So some child could be an introvert child, another child could be an extrovert child. Based on their child, the robot will have, each robot will have their own interaction with those kids based on understanding those kids. So we built a team of roboticists, artificial intelligence guys, mathematicians, pediatric neuropsychologists, teachers, a good mix of product people, artists, almost 14 to 16 disciplines of people got involved. And then we built the product from there step by step. And at each step, you're working in the dark till you get to that point that yes, you're piloting. It's come to a point that the technology is ready to be deployed into consumer market, and then you deploy it. And you each year you improve the level of threshold of that technology. So 2017, the robot was able to read the emotional state. We built the data around it and understood that, okay, we are able to understand the emotional state after 2 months of interaction with the user. Today, we've reached a point that maybe after a few weeks, we understand what is the sentiments of the user, what he likes, what he dislikes. And at a high level, we are able to say what is the mood of the child, whether the child is happy, sad, and likewise have a new engagement with the child. So we are improving by each day in that.
So in the world of EQ, is this like patentable? Have you filed patents for this? Talk a little bit about that journey of intellectual property creation, because that is definitely rare in India in some sense, especially in this field.
Correct. So we've filed multiple patents. We've not only filed them in India, we filed them in US also. We initially filed 4 patents. One of them got granted globally. By December, we'll be having almost 12 plus applications across US and India that would have been progressed. And in fact, in September itself, we filed 2. And in October, November, December, there's a pipeline of over the past 2 years of research that's gone into patent filings for October, November, December, another 6. So it's actually the product team works on a concept, builds it, the entire layer of it, validates it, puts it on a few section of the society, does a pilot, validates it, documents it into a patent, and files it.
Okay, so when we move forward, what sort of traction you've seen? You said that now 80% of your robos are sold globally. Talk a little bit about the plans to actually take this product to market, because now you're hitting the markets in sort of version 3 of your product in that sense.
Okay.
So talk a little bit about the numbers if you can, and what is it you're selling? How are people reacting to the product?
So first and foremost, we were going to launch Miko 3 this year. Considering the pandemic, we didn't know how the consumer sentiment would be. So we'll be launching the 3rd generation of our product in next year, towards next Christmas, in October, November 2021. But Miko 2 today essentially sells, we have users from over 90 plus countries who are using our products. At the same time, we have very strong retail presence, offline presence in stores in Middle East, in Saudi, UAE, UK, as well as US and India. Almost 350 plus stores that are selling Miko very well. Online presence is active in across different geographies. From a traction perspective, we've also, the pandemic has had a silver lining where kids are at home. They don't go they cannot go out as much as they could before, and the engagement on Miko has shot up 20% month on month all through the pandemic since February, where kids are now using Miko a lot more than what they would before. And we've started delivering services through Miko robots. We've started giving different forms of content through the Miko robots. So I used to read Amar Chitrakatha, Tinkle Digest comics when I was a kid. So Amar Chitrakatha signed up with us. They put their comics on Miko. Then Navneet Syllabus has started putting their syllabus onto Miko. So the Miko could take a revision of a CPSE class of a certain or an ICSE class. Now we are getting Cambridge and IB curriculum also. So we've opened up the platform for third-party content players to put it. So going forward, we see this company becoming into a strong platform for kids of different forms of content, which the robot leverages using robotics, AI, capabilities. So even for example, if the child had to play a game of hide and seek, I won't be surprised if 6 months down the line, the robot would be able to play hide and seek with the child, where the child is hiding, robot is searching, and so on and so forth. So it's an open platform where anyone can build something innovative out of it. We sell it as a brand, and going forward, this would become the first healthy interface of technology in the life of a child before a child gets his or her hands on a smartphone by the time they enter their teenage.
So talk about this world where you're an Indian company, a bunch of Indian scientists in that sense of the word. There are lots of Indian scientists; they're known for their, but our presence in the world of robots and artificial intelligence is still very, very small. So
Yes.
how serious are people taking you when they look at the product that you're putting out?
So I think that has been, so first recognition came from a lot of corporates. When IBM, so IBM works a lot on IBM Watson. Some of them who know that it's a massive AI engine, IBM Watson, that they created, and a team of solid engineers from IBM Watson had come in around 2017-18, and what we were doing with it. They learned, okay, they felt it's an Indian company. So surprisingly, what surprised us that most of the US companies that are flag bearers of technology, uh, whether they are startups or large scale multinationals, will always have an Indian in the co-founding team who's driving the technology there. And we always felt, why not we build that technology and brand out of India and build it up from here. Maybe scale can come 2-3 years down the line, but we might as well build it up from our home ground and become a global Apple coming out of India. That with that vision we start. So IBM Watson had come in 2017-18. We told them what we are doing. They initially said, okay, we also have Watson, and they actually grilled our AI layer so much, and in terms of certain areas of technology, that they completely understood that we had a niche. We got awarded as the second most deep tech company in India by IBM itself in that time. Like this, the recognition first started coming from a lot of corporates with multiple awards who started understanding that the work that we were doing was very, very novel, forward looking, and coming out of India, which was rare. And they acknowledged that. And then gradually, when it got presented to consumers outside of different countries, I think uh, the reception of a brand coming from India more than it coming from China is much more positive for international masses. In fact, when I was talking to an investor, Mr. Sethi knows about it. He said that I can bet on you that Hamleys in UK will never ever place an Indian branded product in their store. Have to be an American or a British or the kind of brand that will come in there. And I think I took it very personally. It actually disappointed me a lot. And I think in 7 months, we set up our huge booth inside Hamleys of London, and they welcomed it into their stores. So I think we've seen very positive reception coming out of India for a deep tech consumer brand.
At a personal level, I know you are multiple co-founders of this firm. What's at a different level, what's it been like? Whether the chemistry work, whether you knowing each other from campus work, and what have been some of the challenges that you had to face, throughout the fact that you knew each other a long time back, but obviously it's been a tough journey. So talk a little bit about what co-founders go through when there are adversities, and how have you addressed them?
So we've basically, I think we've been a little rebellious through the student years itself. We used to form teams on campus outside our academic credits and go and raise from outside companies some CSR money to make robots, because IIT said we don't have the budget to put in 50 lakhs or 1 CR on your project. So we used to raise CSR money from companies and build these robots and participate. So the same team that did that every year, time and again, and put together 20-25 team members, we all knew that we would not be able to be working in a company for long, and we will have to ultimately start our own company. That was sure. But we wanted to see how a large organization, a large engineering company works. That's the reason why I taken up working at Siemens, where I wanted to see a large organization with 200-300 engineers on a mega project, and which has say 20-30 million dollars being invested into R&D. Once that experience came in and I understood how a large function works, and then I think it was fairly simple. It was a phone call that I did to my colleagues, ki chalo abhi job chhod do aur karte hain kuch to. And we all put in our papers within a week, and we came together to decide what are we supposed to do. And with a lot of research, we arrived at it. But coming to the question, I think knowing your founders through a very long time helps immense a lot. And I think we all know each other's strengths and weaknesses very well. We all know that there is what areas that specific person is good at, so that specific vertical is allotted to him. I oversee the strategy and the business angle of it, along with the product, the consumer facing angle of it. My CTO oversees the technology and research, and I intentionally tell him, don't think consumer, I'll think consumer, you think the technology part. And Chintan, who the third one, the CEO, he oversees the manufacturing and supply chain, because for a product like this, there's a very different supply chain line of thought that needs to be built. So he sees that, and we know very well. Like, I think if I had to coin it in one line, the values and the vision of the company, all co-founders need to be completely aligned for that single statement that Piyush had mentioned in the start. We all should be aligned, but the personality and the skill set should be totally complementary, and where that is extremely essential for any founding team that should come in. Second,
Yeah. So I mean, really proud to hear the story of young budding entrepreneurs who've really made it in a very different field. Best of luck. Hope you become the next Apple and create a new interface so that we can forget their other ones. Thanks a lot, Sneh, for being on the show.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Yes.
Over to Mona.
So thank you, Sneh. That was really different and inspiring. Thank you, everybody, for spending your Friday evening with us. I would like to thank our District Governor, Mr. Sunil Mehra, and the First Lady, Mrs. Shilpi Mehra, for gracing today's event as our chief guest. I would also like to thank the presidents and the members of all the clubs for co-hosting this event. This event has brought together many eminent personalities, Mr. Sudhir Sethi, Mr. Piyush Bansal, Mr. Sneh Vaswani, and Ms. Rashi Jalan. Thank you for sharing your successful journeys with us and inspiring us. This event would not have been possible without the brilliant efforts of the Bombay Bayview team. I would like to thank Manish and Amit Choksi for curating this event, Apurva Shah for preparing the script, Jitin Sanghi for the technical support, Kartikeya Desai for making our Fridays very meaningful with these speaker events, Ketan Sheth for luring the audience tonight with his creatives. Thank you everyone for working so hard towards making this event successful. Signing off, Mona Babla. Over to Tejal Damani for the secretarial announcements.
Hi everybody. The attendance today was a great 125 logins. The next meetings in October are a club assembly on the 23rd October at 6:30 p.m. and a speaker meeting at 7:30 p.m. The speaker is Dr. Siddhant Bhargava, and we have a fellowship on the 30th of October. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Smita.
The wrap up, Manish bhai?
Yeah. So I think we've had a great show. We've heard the story from three young sort of entrepreneurs who've gone through a lot of trials and tribulations, and have sort of gotten the courage and I think encouragement and support to be able to create very differentiated startups, first of its kind, not only in India but in the world. And I think it's been inspiring to hear their stories. But I think what was also inspiring is how they got the confidence of the venture capitalists who sort of have given them the funding to reach or sort of make their dreams come true, and the role that the venture ecosystem plays in sort of creating the kind of innovation that India is seeing amongst young startup companies out there. And I think the role that all of us can play, not only as investors into venture capital companies and eventually into startups, but also in terms of encouraging our own young adults to sort of go out and make their dreams come true on their entrepreneurial journey. So I think an entire entire spectrum of learning is what we've seen today. Thank you all for participating in such large numbers, and thanks to Sudhir, Rashi, Piyush, and Sneh for such wonderful sharing out there.
Absolutely, Manish
Thank you.
Bhai. And thank you so much for curating this event and hosting it the way you did. You were fantastic. So,
Thanks. Thank you.
yes, thank you everybody for joining us this evening. The meeting is now adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, Manish bhai, good one.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good
Apologies
one.
for delaying
Super.
everybody's departure and dinner.
Yeah, thank you.
Not at all.
Brilliant,
I
Manish
think
bhai. Excellent.
excellent.
Thank you for
Thanks.
this.
Thanks.
Thank you, Manish bhai.
Thank you,
Bye.
Mona. Thank you, Smita. Katie.
Thank you, Ami Bhavi.
Vipin,
Hi, Avi.
Apurva.
Hi, Avi.
Hi. Hi.
Hi, Amrita.
Hello. Excellent, excellent talk, Manish bhai.
Ran over a little
Very
bit. Sorry
insightful
about
and
that.
informative.
Superb.
No, not at
No,
all.
you were
Totally worth
super.
it.
The
One
way
of the
you
best.
just conducted
One of the
this
best
was
for the
superb.
talk.
Absolutely.
The
Very
perfect
inspiring.
questions asked.
Very inspiring.
So, Manish bhai, many talents coming out. Lockdown ma bija talents hata. Where you are curating events. Avi?
हाँ,
Manish bhai ની બધી talents બહાર આવે છે.
હજી ઘણી છે બીજી.
હજી ઘણી છે.
Hey, buddy, save it for yourself. Hey, buddy, save it for yourself.